Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to share the stage with such an esteemed panel who I've known at least 10 years each, some 20 years. Ruth and I go way back. I met Eleanor. She's an incredibly loving, kind human being. Her husband, believe it or not, is an amazing guitarist, one of the best in Sweden. It's just an odd couple, but they're wonderful. And I just thank them for their contribution to religious freedom and for the defense of the church. I would use my opening remarks to talk about the issue of so-called polite persecution. Polite persecution is the often calculated suppression of rights and freedoms under the cover of legality, bureaucracy, and social pressure. It's really the daily intolerance and discrimination that countless Christians, and to be fair, people of other faith, face around Western Europe and large parts of the OSCE. Polite persecution, unlike a lot of the persecution we read about in this wonderful text, it's not done with clubs or tear gas. Well, sometimes, unfortunately, now it's done with tear gas. But it's done with licensing laws, bank account deplatforming, public defamation, dismissal from your job, or regulatory burdens. It's a creature of the media, the political class, bureaucracy, academia, and campaigners. It's crucial to recognize that polite persecution isn't benign. It's insidious precisely because it's designed to appear reasonable. It seeks to marginalize targeted individuals and communities because they don't adhere to the cultural zeitgeist, much of what we've heard from Ruth just now. And sadly, it's an increasingly visible phenomenon throughout the OSCE region. Much of my professional life, particularly over the last 15 years, has been spent defending those who have suffered detriments simply because they wanted to manifest a deeply held belief. Polite persecution is not as clean as other forms of persecution, especially much of what's been showcased in the Religious Freedom in the World report over its illustrious 25-year history. The cases we hear about, the ones that are on the front page of the newspapers and in the media, are often complex and have nuanced facts. The cases do have one thing in common, typically, and that's a person of faith has openly defied the cultural orthodoxy of the day by saying something publicly, doing something publicly, or refusing to do something publicly as a matter of conscience. Now, the specific cultural orthodoxy I'm speaking about is the often controversial areas of public debate and morality, where the division between traditional Christian faith and progressive cultural values is sometimes at an explosive impasse. That could be as simple as a government employee who doesn't want to wear a rainbow lanyard because of his faith. It could be an employee who's dismissed for not wishing to be compelled to use transgender pronouns. We've seen a lot of these cases in the Western countries of adoption agencies who may be called to defy their Christian doctrinal beliefs in order to stay on the right side of the law. We've seen Christian ministries being debanked without notice simply for being Christian ministries. A person can be dismissed because of something they've posted on their Facebook about a sensitive theological issue or for quoting scripture on a sensitive issue. Or Christian businesses can be protested because they donated money to groups that people don't particularly agree with all the time. The examples are really endless. The manifestation of belief can lead to being dismissed from one's job, removed from one's university studies. People have been increasingly reported to their professional bodies. So in my work, I've seen this phenomenon, particularly with doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and teachers who are either being accused of imposing their beliefs on someone or for having caused offense for expressing a Christian view in the workplace. Others may receive a visit from the police for what is often called a non-criminal hate incident. And those get reported on your record, and future employers will see those, the non-criminal hate incident. And the question is, what is hate exactly? And I like to quote Lewis Carroll's Humpty Dumpty when he says, "When I use a word, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less." Hate is often in the eye of the beholder. It's a label we put on views we disagree with. Causing offense is now viewed as hate or extremism. A wise High Court judge in the UK in a case called Smith v. Trafford Housing said, and I think it's reasonable for him to have said, that no matter how mildly you express a view about certain cultural issues or moral issues, someone who holds passionately to the other side will take offense at that view, even though objectively it's not offensive. And at the end of the day, this invariably causes self-censorship. People become afraid to express their deeply held religious views, and the result, obviously, is an erosion of freedom of religion and of freedom of speech. So while the law of the land might say that these rights are protected, and the books, on the books, they might be so, but in practice, there's a heckler's veto, which are preventing countless people of faith from living out that faith to its full. And to be fair, mass media has played a role as well. It often manifests polite persecution through stereotyping. So Christians are portrayed often as backward, strange, or hateful. The visibility of people of faith in film and television has noticeably declined. And all of these cultural forces have a radical effect over the years. So, I mean, just 30 years ago, it was viewed with deep respect that a family went to church. Now it's viewed with suspicion. In essence, polite persecution has created this us versus them mentality, which has divided many Western Europeans increasingly and unfortunately with violent effect. So from an academic perspective and from a professional interest, I'm pleased that ACN is giving a platform to this issue here today and in the report, and I look forward to discussing it further on the panel.
Thank you, Roger. I would like to ask you which other examples of this polite persecution can we know about or you had to deal? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, there's no shortage of incidences, unfortunately, and there are a lot of highly publicized ones. The Little Sisters of the Poor, for example, which became a world, certainly in Western countries, it became a large case where they were fighting for an exemption not to have to provide contraceptives as part of their health insurance scheme. People would be surprised to learn that that case is still ongoing despite winning a fairly big case at the Supreme Court. We've seen laws in parts of Australia where they're trying to break the confessional seal by threat of criminal persecution. Obviously laws prohibiting conscientious objection for medical personnel and pharmacists for things like abortifacients and euthanasia. The OSCE, interestingly, has dedicated an entire publication to the issue of intolerance and discrimination against Christians. They've had several panels, several seminars over the years. Congress in the United States has discussed this issue. I've personally given testimony to the Helsinki Commission before Congress on this issue, and the EU has discussed the issue. And I would suggest that what the OSCE calls intolerance and discrimination against Christians is exactly identical to what the late Pope Francis called polite persecution. I think they're pretty close to being one and the same. And just to provide two concrete examples, the first is the case of Christy Higgs, which was decided by the Court of Appeal in the United Kingdom just a few months ago. The Supreme Court refused to hear the appeal. They refused permission to the defendant's school, so that is now the law of the land. I acted in the case representing one of the intervening parties, the Association of Christian Teachers. Christy was a pastoral assistant at a primary school, and the background is in 2018, the government in England was introducing statutory sex and relationships education, making it mandatory for primary schools, secondary schools, confessional schools. Basically, every school had to teach the curriculum. And at the time, there was deep debate about what this was going to mean for particularly young children. And Christy, as a mother, as a Christian, she took to Facebook, as many people do, to discuss these issues. And she posted 2 posts, which she added her own commentary to. And given the situation that she's got young kids, that she's in the primary school environment, they were quite emotive and perhaps a little insensitive in tone. But her Facebook settings were sent to private, so only her friends could see it. She had her maiden name. She didn't mention the school, so there was really no threat of reputational loss for the school. Yet someone sent in an anonymous complaint to the school, and she was dismissed from her job. She went through, I think, a 6-hour disciplinary hearing where her views were compared to Nazism and things like that, and she was eventually fired for gross misconduct. So it took nearly 6 years for the case to get up to the Court of Appeal, and when it finally made its decision, it came to, basically they created a new legal test for these types of cases. So the first prong of the test is if an employer dismisses you simply for expressing a deeply held religious belief, and it's the belief itself that is cause of dismissal, that is discrimination. There's no defense to it. The substance of the belief is protected. However, if the manner in which that belief is expressed is objectively offensive, then the court will need to analyze the competing factors such as the importance of protecting free speech, any harm it might have caused to the reputation of the employer, and of course that harm, as the court had said, has to be actual. It can't be theoretical. And you have to look at the effect of the remarks on other people who were involved. And I think this morning, when His Eminence Cardinal Parolin was speaking about the fact that freedom of religion is not absolute, it has to be governed by principles such as reason and common decency, I think that speaks to the test. I think what I liked the most about the Court of Appeal judgment is it said that when we look at these cases, we need to look at what's said objectively, what the speaker intended to say, rather than what the offended listener believed it to say. So, I mean, the word landmark ruling is thrown a lot these days, and I think this is one of them, precisely because it is one of the first blows in recent memory, like a pushback from a prominent Western country to polite persecution. They were, in a unanimous decision, the court was quite taken aback by the fact that she was even suspended, nevertheless dismissed for speaking emotively about a matter that was passionate to her, because that is precisely what freedom of speech is intended to do. The second example, and the last example I provide, it deals with a secondary school, and this happened just 2 weeks ago. I won't name the school or the locality in the UK where it happened. Essentially, a group of secondary students, and there was a sizable group, wanted to start a Christian club in their school, and they were told by the head teacher that that wasn't going to happen. And it wasn't because anything the kids said or did, it was because it was a Christian club, and people might find offense at the fact that a maintained school was giving a platform to a Christian club. And we've seen this throughout the schools and the universities throughout the United Kingdom, where they're deplatforming, refusing to associate, or even protesting clubs just on the basis of the fact that we disagree with you. And that obviously causes a chilling effect. It means that people who are passionate about these issues, people of faith, don't share the same rights as everyone else, simply because they hold to beliefs that not everyone agrees with. And these types of incidences and bars to having associated clubs, bars to professions like Eleanor has faced, are really defining characteristics of polite persecution. And ultimately, I would just say faith shouldn't be silenced. Catholics and people of faith around the world should enjoy the exact same rights as every other member of Western society. And as we've said many times now today, because it is the truth, that religious freedom is indeed a human right. It's not a privilege, and it must be respected. Thank you.